I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris.
President Trump fulfills a major campaign promise, pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord.
He is not helping the forgotten American. He is hurting them. Their kids will have worse asthma in the summer.
For me, this is kind of like Groundhog Day. And you know what happened when George Bush pulled out of the Kyoto Treaty? We reduced our emissions faster than the European countries that are now criticizing Donald Trump.
While you were sleeping, the Trump administration asking the Supreme Court to reinstate the revised executive order on restricted travel.
Hillary Clinton's 2016 excuse tour continued today.
Obviously, I'm particularly concerned about the role that Russia played.
It's a pathetic performance. It's sort of childish. She obviously can't accept responsibility.
Mr. Woods, can you come up this way, please? Blow out. Blow out. Don't suck it, blow out.
Taking home a big WIN. That's an easy one. 12-year-old Ananya Vinay coming in first place at the 90th Scripps National Spelling Bee.
American.
She knows what it means.
A-R-O-C-A-I-N.
That is correct.
Congratulations.
We're going to have a lot of fun this morning.
And I'm in for Ainsley today because, as we said, it's a huge show. She is down in D.C. for a huge interview with the Vice President. Hey, Ainsley. Hey, Abby. Hey, Pete. Hey, Abby. Hey, Brian. Good morning to you. I want to be in two places at one time. I mean, how cool is this to wake up at the White House? But I also want to be there for the concert series and meet all of our awesome viewers that come to New York. But we do have this big interview because the President's just coming home from his foreign trip. He's in the White House. We saw him yesterday in the Rose Garden. He was there with the Vice President, Mike Pence. We're going to be sitting down with the Vice President to talk about that trip, to talk about pulling out of the Paris Agreement and all kinds of things. We're also going to ask him some of your questions. So we want you to send in your questions to friends@foxnews.com, and we'll spend a few minutes with him, just chatting with him, whatever you want us to ask. So send those questions in. We'll go through them, and we're going to sit down with the Vice President. How cool is that? That's going to come up at 8 o'clock, but I'll be talking with you all morning.
Yeah, I mean, the whole world reacted to what the President did yesterday. We're going to go over that, Ainsley. So the Vice President spoke out, and he's going to be speaking out with you again today. So the President is anything but every single day is impactful, especially yesterday.
Ainsley, I'll be emailing my question to friends@foxnews.com for you.
You have my email address. You can just send it right to me. All of y'all can. Brian, proud of you. You were with the Wounded Warriors last night, and I know you're going to be talking about that, too.
Yeah, coming up in a little while. And I had a chance to say in Manhattan. That was cool. It felt cool for the first time in a long time. All right, Ainsley, thanks so much. We'll be with you
We'll see you soon, Ainsley. What a perfect time for this interview with the Vice President.
Oh, yeah.
Really look forward to what he has to say.
It is. Meanwhile, a Fox News alert now. While you were resting, the Trump administration asking the Supreme Court to revive the controversial to some travel ban.
Well, if passed, it would overrule lower courts' decisions to block that order, barring entry for people from 6 Muslim-majority countries.
This is a big one. It's why the Gorsuch nomination was so important. Part of the reason why. Our own Griff Jenkins is live in our nation's capital with the breaking details. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Pete, Abby, and Brian. It would take just 5 Supreme Court votes to allow the travel order to go back into place, freezing the lower court's decision to block it. The Justice Department arguing in their filing late yesterday that the federal court in Richmond made several mistakes in their ruling, and this order makes the nation safer if it's in place. Now, it halts new visas from being issued to the people in Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. President Trump initially signing the executive order in January. It immediately faced backlash with protests erupting across the country and federal judges blocking it. Then in March, the president issued a narrower order, but it was still blocked by federal courts. Hawaii then issuing a lawsuit against the order. Now, the ACLU lashed out on Twitter overnight, writing, quote, "We've beat this hateful ban and are ready to do it again. Hashtag no Muslim ban ever." But a Justice Department spokeswoman defended the order, saying, quote, "The president is not required to admit people from countries that sponsor or shelter terrorism until he determines that they can be properly vetted and do not pose a security risk to the United States." And finally, the 4th Court of Appeals in Virginia, for which this is all about, maintains that this is in effect a Muslim ban, and they say that the national security concerns are an afterthought. Guys?
Thanks, Griff.
We'll see where it goes. Thank you,
Keep
Griff.
going up, and up, and that was kind of buried because that came out right after the president got out of the Paris deal.
That could be a really big one. I mean, it was a signature part of the early part of his administration. If this were to be overturned and put it in place, you start to see a number of wins for the Trump administration.
Yeah, but what everyone else is talking about this morning, as you mentioned, Brian, is this Paris deal, pulling out of it, and it seems like everywhere else they're in hysterics over the decision that was made. But President Trump gave a strong speech yesterday about why he pulled out. Let's take a look at some of that.
I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris. I promised I would exit or renegotiate any deal which fails to serve America's interests. Very rarely do we have a deal that works for this country, but they'll soon be under renegotiation. The process has begun from day one. Not only does this deal subject our citizens to harsh economic restrictions, it fails to live up to our environmental ideals. I cannot in good conscience support a deal that punishes the United States, which is what it does. The world's leader in environmental protection, while imposing no meaningful obligations on the world's leading polluters.
And we'd be writing checks. We're writing checks to developing nations to develop green technology when a lot of them are just struggling to make ends meet or put food on the table.
Yeah, it was a great speech, in my opinion. It was an America First speech. I love that line. He represents Pittsburgh, not Paris. This is Americanism, not globalism. The elites have forgotten that. The elites in our country and elsewhere, they love to collaborate with other elites and forget about how it impacts real people. And at the end of the day, this is not just a redistribution of wealth, the Paris Climate Accord. It's a redistribution of power. It's a punishment against superpowers and powerful countries saying, you've polluted too much, now it's time for you to pay up so everyone else can pollute and catch up. Well, it turns out we've done a lot already.
Well, the thing is, other nations say we're in, but no one's sacrificing as much as us because we're so far advanced in our technological, right, and in our emissions in our industries.
Why should we be punished for that?
Right, and what they're doing is we're not walking away from anything that we're developing. We're not saying, okay, forget about making electric cars, forget about the hybrid engine, forget about wind and solar. What they're saying is we're not going to be bound by an international agreement which potentially could have some enforcement capabilities.
Yes.
That means a global body would potentially putting some restraints on our economy.
That is exactly right, but people are not describing it that way. A lot of people are in hysterics. They're saying that we've lost our position as a leader on the world stage. If we have to be part of a deal to be a leader on the world stage, I don't want to live in that world, right? As you said, we're actually living on an abundance of natural gas right now. I mean, we can continue to lead by example here in this country.
Which is clean.
Which is clean, right? And we've got to take a real opportunity there. I mean, to lead on the global stage. But you think about places like China and like India. I've spent many years living in that part of the world. There are moments, mornings you wake up, you cannot even see outside your bedroom. They are moving backwards in many cases when it comes to energy.
Yeah, and we're moving forward. Anything right now. They have to do almost nothing right now.
And have us pay for it.
Yeah, but people say, well, China's closing down power plants. Well, that's because a lot of their population is getting older and their industry is changing. But for the most part, China has a 5-year plan to raise coal-fired power capacity by over 900 gigawatts. That's in the short term. So everyone's making these statements, these platitudes, but in reality, they're not doing anything. Here's what a lot of Democrats and other world leaders are saying.
And the media.
On a sunny day in the Rose Garden, what could be defined and construed as a dark speech.
I have such rage and sadness. We just watched a dangerous little man give a very, very scary speech.
One of the most bleak depictions of America's role in the world as environmental partners.
He is not helping the forgotten American. He is hurting them. Their kids will have worse asthma in the summer. And the president who talked about putting America first has now put America last.
This was full nationalist, America first, damn the rest of the world, President Trump.
It was almost like Mad Libs for conservatives, this speech.
It was profoundly sad. He, as you pointed out, portrayed a very dark vision for the future of the country.
This will be the day that the United States resigned as the leader of the free world. It's nothing short of that.
I will note that Mitt Romney tweeted almost the same thing, saying it's about America remaining the global leader. I mean, in my mind, this is leadership. When the whole crowd's going that way, and you say, I'm going to go this way because I believe it's better for my country and the world, that's leadership.
Yeah, well, he's also, as he's been doing from day one, running for president, fighting for the American people. You know who ends up paying for that price when governments companies have to pay for those regulations to increase what they're doing?
That's right.
That falls on our back. The American taxpayer has to pay for that.
Absolutely. Now, meanwhile, Mark Thiessen, who's a speechwriter for president, terror expert, best-selling author, and featured columnist, said, listen, this is deja vu all over again. Listen.
I served in the Bush administration when George W. Bush withdrew from the Kyoto Treaty on global warming. So for me, this is kind of like Groundhog Day. I'm experiencing all the same outrage and all the same predictions of apocalypse and the world is coming to an end and all the rest of it. And you know what happened when George Bush pulled out of the Kyoto Treaty? In the next 14 years, we reduced our emissions by 18%. We reduced our emissions faster than the European countries that are now criticizing Donald Trump. Our emissions right now are at 1992 levels. And it's not because of a treaty. It's not because of some piece of parchment signed in Paris or Kyoto. It's because of the free market economy, innovation, and technology. It's hydraulic fracking. It's all of these clean coal technologies that are reducing our emissions. That is going to continue regardless of this Paris Agreement. And by the way, we did it while keeping our energy prices half of those in Europe.
Can't say it any better. The free
That is
market
so well said.
versus state-based solutions.
Heritage Foundation says this is going to cost 400,000 jobs, and by 2040 would cost the economy. This Paris Accord was going to cost, according to the Heritage Foundation, us 400,000 jobs, 200,000 manufacturing jobs, and for the average family of four, $20,000. And our GDP over the course of a couple of years will lose $2.5 trillion. Of course, 10 years. But that is a conservative organization. I'll grant that. But these are numbers that President Trump won't want.
What you're saying is what President Trump said. It's a bad deal, so we're out.
All right. Meanwhile, guess who's in? Jillian.
Hey, Jillian, her bright yellow this morning.
Happy Friday, guys.
Friday.
We made it. It's the end of the week, but we still have a little bit of time to get through. So let's get you caught up on what you need to know before you leave the house, starting with the Fox News alert. Defense Secretary James Mattis landing in Singapore overnight. He's meeting with diplomats from South Korea, Japan, and Australia for a key defense summit. The leaders will discuss North Korea's growing nuclear threat, as well as America's security goals under President Trump. This is his second trip to the region since taking charge of the Pentagon. Dozens are dead after a gunman sets a packed casino on fire. An English-speaking man storming the luxury resort in the Philippines, firing shots and torching gambling tables. Panicked guests running for their lives, as you can see at the Resorts World Manila, as it fills with thick smoke. Victims dying from suffocation. The gunman also dead. Police do not believe this was terrorism, but still a frightening scene. And that's a look at your headlines on this Friday. I'll see you guys in a little bit.
So frightening. Thank you, Jillian.
Sounds good. I know you're going to be heading outside. Coming up, though, we've been telling you about the leader of a terror group set to be honored at a parade in New York City. This morning, a big update, and it's breaking right now.
Plus, stocks surging and the job market booming. So why is the so-called mainstream media ignoring all this good news? Our own Stuart Varney, he's not ignoring it, but he is drinking coffee from a Keurig machine, and he is next.
That is our sponsor this year.
That's right.
All eyes are on Wall Street this morning as the market gets ready to open after another major milestone. The Dow hit an all-time record on Thursday, closing at 21,144.
All right, this, as a new report from the ADP, shows the U.S. added 250,000 private sector jobs in May, far surpassing the numbers estimated by economists. So where is this surge coming from?
Well, we're going to ask the host of Varney. We'll see. The host of Varney & Company, Stuart Varney, on the Fox Business Network. Good morning, Stuart.
Okay, which question do you want me to answer? Where's the surge coming from?
The jobs?
From jobs?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely it is. This is the story about jobs, jobs, jobs. You just pointed out 250,000 new private sector jobs last month. The Independent Business Association reports the greatest hiring surge in about 40 years, and we've had 1 million new jobs created since the Trump presidency began.
Stuart,
now, that's a pretty good record.
I haven't read those headlines anywhere, really.
Well, no surprise there.
But that's a huge news, Stuart.
This is a success story for President Trump. If it's a success for President Trump, it will not receive wide coverage in the media, period.
Is this still based on expectations of and optimism, or are some of the executive orders and things he's done, have they already unleashed something?
It's based on the reality now. We are creating jobs, wages are going up, the economy is expanding. And the market realizes this. The market looks at this and says, well, that means better profits down the road. That means more jobs down the road. Stock prices go up.
It kind of leaked before the 3 p.m. presser, which was around 3:20, that this was coming out. The president's going to back out of the Paris deal. Did the market fully respond to that and digest that?
Yes, the market did respond to that. Throughout yesterday's trading session, the market was flat to lower to slightly higher. Then early afternoon, when the word leaked out that, yes, we would be exiting the Paris Accord, it's at that moment that the stock market started to go straight up. And it closed at yet another all-time record high. And by the way, it will open higher again on top of that record yet again this morning.
Why do these oil and gas companies, why were they all for staying in? Rex Tillerson, Exxon, the new CEO, why were they saying we want to stay in the Paris deal? Yet they seem to benefit from it.
Exxon is being taken to court, being held liable for global warming. They want to assume a defensive position. That's what's going on there.
So you said there are a lot of companies that would be happy
mitigating
about
liability.
Yeah, okay, you've got Robert Iger, Disney, dropping out of the President's Scientific Advisory Council. You've got Elon Musk, Tesla, dropping out the Advisory Council. That's it. Industrial America loves what's going on. Industrial America wants cheap electricity to bring manufacturing back here, and that's what we're going to get.
You want some more of that charisma? You got to flip channels to the Fox Business Network.
Yeah.
Stuart Varney's often, he's at his best on Friday. Let's be honest.
At 4 o'clock in the morning. Thank you, James.
All right, Stuart, thank you. Meanwhile, straight ahead, the left melting down over the decision to drop out of the Paris Accord.
The president who talked about putting America first has now put America last.
Oh, good. Is this new? Is this a debate worth having? We'll do it.
Plus, Hillary Clinton returned to the scene of the crime yesterday. And wait until you hear what she said about the election this time. You don't want to miss this one.
Quick headlines now. President Trump signing a waiver keeping the U.S. Embassy in Israel in Tel Aviv for now. It delays a controversial move to some to move to Jerusalem in hopes of helping with peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's disappointed, but he still appreciates the president's friendship. And former FBI Director James Comey will testify on Capitol Hill on Thursday. He'll speak to the Senate Intelligence Committee that's investigating Russia's alleged election meddling. This will be Comey's first public appearance since he was fired by President Trump last month. Pete.
Obligation is to the American people. The Paris Accord would undermine our economy, hamstring our workers, weaken our sovereignty. It is time to exit the Paris Accord.
President Trump says he put America first by exiting the Paris Climate Accord, but critics say it was America last.
A dark speech.
This will be the day that the United States resigned as the leader of the free world.
I have such rage and sadness. We just watched a dangerous little man give a very, very scary speech.
Okay. But is this America First move so bad? Here to debate former World Bank Special Envoy for Climate Change, Andrew Stier, and political analyst for Rasmussen Reports, Amy Holmes. Thank you both for joining us this morning. So, Andrew, I'll go to you first. You're obviously a critic of the fact that the president pulled out, but is he not right that he represents the people of Pittsburgh, not the people of Paris, and he's trying to put their interest first?
Well, it's interesting that after he said he represented Pittsburgh, the mayor of Pittsburgh said, well, actually, I do, and we're doing very well on green jobs, 65,000 green jobs in Pennsylvania alone, which is more than in the coal sector. And it was interesting just hearing the discussion about these wonderful new jobs over the last month, and it's a real blessing that jobs are growing so rapidly. And of course, the sector where they're growing the most rapidly is in clean energy, which is growing just in leaps and bounds, now over 2.5 million people working in clean energy as opposed to 55,000 in coal.
Amy, as many have pointed out, it's innovation, it's the free market, it's things like that that have reduced emissions and brought a lot of jobs to the United States, not international agreements. So is the president not in keeping with trying to build more jobs here at home.
Well, Pete, I can tell you about polling data, and consistently, polling has showed that environmental issues, going green, is actually very, very low on voter priorities. What they want to see is growing jobs. And I appreciate seeing the Capitol building with our guest in the background, because with the Kyoto Treaty back in the 90s, when this question was put to the United States Senate, it was voted down 95-0. When it comes to the American people, what they want to see is the economy growing. They don't want treaties that are going to bind us to regulations that are going to hamstring our economy, not allow it to grow. And in fact, Donald Trump campaigned on this, so he's keeping his campaign promises.
Well, Andrew, over to you. I mean, many people have described this agreement as a massive redistribution of wealth from wealthy developing countries to others, but also a redistribution of power. Is America not being punished for being powerful and productive in a free market economy under this climate accord? And President Trump is saying, hey, we shouldn't be punished for that. Let us determine our own fate.
Actually, the most recent polls show that 72% of the American people actually would like President Trump to address climate change and to stay in the Paris deal. Is the United States being punished? Well, he talked yesterday about $1 billion of U.S. money going to help other countries. Last year, China put $42 billion into other countries in order to promote low-carbon development, and it's spending currently more than twice what we're spending here on renewable energy, and no wonder it is therefore winning the race for export. And today, as you know, China and the European Union are announcing a major new pact, technology transfer, working together in each other's countries, building a faster progress on technology and so on.
So that's great for China,
but here's what I can tell you. Gallup had a poll in May, just last month, that found only 2% of American voters ranked the environment as one of their most important priorities. When it comes to the Paris Accord, what we know is that in order for us to sign up, we would have to give billions to developing countries to tell them, like, okay, you can try to catch up with us, but you have to go green, and we're going to pay you to do that. What Donald Trump said yesterday was, you know what, we're not going to be involved with this, bait and switch. We're going to be involved in making America great again, using his own terminology.
Well, and using the free market and innovation, things like horizontal drilling and fracking that have reduced emissions because the market actually works.
Don't use that word.
So Andrew Steer and Amy Holmes.
Let's stick to the facts. The Paris deal doesn't require the United States to put money in whatsoever.
Which is why it was really a teethless deal to begin with anyway. So Andrew Steer and Amy Holmes, thank you both for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Pete.
All right, coming up, Hillary Clinton returned to the scene of the crying yesterday. And wait until you hear what she said about the election this time. And our own Ainsley Earhart is getting ready for her big interview with Vice President Pence. Ainsley, good morning.
Good morning to you, Pete. That's right. That interview's coming up in an hour and a half at 8 o'clock. So you have an hour and a half to get your questions into us. Send us an email at friends@foxnews.com. Send us those questions over. We're going to go through them and decide which ones we want to ask the Vice President. I also have a list of my own questions here in front of me. We'll go through those right after the break. Stay with us.
There you go. It's your shot of the morning. Welcome to the club, the Supreme Court Club. Justice Neil Gorsuch, I don't know if you heard, but he's in there taking his first official photo.
Look at that
He's
photo.
very tall.
He is tall. Well, America's highest scored updating its class picture, showcasing the newest member President Trump's pick. The 9 justices, always seated by seniority, not by height.
The court finally, yes, at full strength again. Justice Gorsuch replacing Antonin Scalia, of course, more than a year after his death. So, a lot of cases coming before that group soon.
And I'm just very curious to see who's going to be getting up and leaving the room soon, right? I mean, there's rumors that something could happen as far as Justice Kennedy
even
as early as this summer. And the summer's here, because I know, because Pete was wearing his tank top around the office, right?
It's summer.
Right, okay, that's fine.
Stay cool.
Well, let's go to Ainsley, who is live at the White House, and it's a beautiful shot where you are, Ainsley. Beautiful morning.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
You know what, all of us, everyone behind the camera, we took a picture when we were walking in. We were like, you know what? We were talking to the staff who works here all the time, all these guys behind the camera. They're here every day. We said, does this ever get old? I mean, this is incredible. What a great job we have to be able to stand here on the lawn of the White House and it's just, you pinch yourself when you do walk up and you see this grand house behind you and know that the president's there, and we're going to be sitting down with the vice president in an hour and a half. But y'all were showing that picture of the Supreme Court. You know, the president last night, the administration asked the Supreme Court to revive that 6-country travel ban. We're going to be talking to the vice president about that because the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeal has upheld that decision. And so you've got 5 conservatives, you've got 4 liberals on the court. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that travel ban. The president is basically saying, I'm going above the heads of the Fourth Circuit Court, and I'm going to be talking to the Supreme Court, and I want them to make the decision.
And here's what's crazy about this, and I'm not a legal scholar, although, you know, I do know the judge.
You play one on TV.
Right, I do know Judge Napolitano. He does talk to me in the hall. I will say this is one of the first times ever somebody's rhetoric on the campaign trail is figuring into their decision instead of looking at what the application is about.
Yeah, I know. We'll ask him about that, Brian. Send us your questions in if you have specific questions about that. Also, pulling out of the Paris Agreement. We saw that yesterday at the Rose Garden behind us. Vice President introduced the president. We'll get his reaction to that and talk further in detail about it and what we can do to maybe compromise and negotiate. Also, terror attack in Manila yesterday, tax reform, health care, Hillary Clinton's comments, and the negative coverage from the media.
Yeah, the question I sent you, Ainsley, was are the Republicans in the Senate actually going to get their act together and pass something? So,
yeah, I don't even need to check my email.
You're no excuse, Pete, but to ask your question.
Yeah, I'd fax you. So check your fax, Ainsley. I don't use email.
I left you a phone message, Ainsley.
Right.
I know, Abby, you're so sweet. Thanks for sitting in that chair. You're doing a great job. But yeah, I got your text messages this morning.
We cannot wait for your interview. A lot going on this morning. Thank you, Ainsley.
Thanks, Ainsley.
All right, Ainsley, thanks so much. She refuses to toss to Jillian, so I guess we will. Yeah. All right, we'll find out what the friction is with that's about a little bit later.
You know, I was busy writing her a letter. You
Well,
she's overwhelmed with letters this morning.
Good Friday morning to you guys. To you at home as well. Let's start with this. Kathy Griffin, the comedian who posed with a fake beheaded President Trump. You remember this. Well, she's going to speak out today. The disgraced star holding a press conference about alleged bullying from the First Family. She's also expected to explain why she took the photo that's causing her to lose gigs and an endorsement deal. The Veterans of Foreign Wars, the latest group to condemn Griffin, saying, quote, her apology is not accepted. Hillary Clinton, she just can't let it go. She's keeping her blame game going, this time trashing President Trump at the same place where she would have given her victory speech in November.
That is unleashing a level of vitriol and defensiveness, hatred, that I don't think we should tolerate.
And remember earlier this week when she was blaming everyone else?
Nothing from the Democratic Party. Comey was more than happy to talk about my emails, but he wouldn't talk about investigation of the Russians.
Well, now even CNN is mocking her. Take a look.
What do we make of this? Besides the fact that the 2016 campaign apparently will never end.
It seems like she's burning bridges within her own party.
I don't understand the Russians cloaked Wisconsin so she couldn't find it on a map to get there and campaign there.
Well, Clinton's keeping the public tour going with a fundraiser in Baltimore on Monday and a commencement speech in Brooklyn next Thursday. All right, we want to warn you, this next video we're about to play could be really disturbing to some and hard to watch. A freak wind gust sends the bounce castles flying through the air with children inside. Play structures lifting off the ground as parents run to help their kids. You can see the castle slam